You're listening to the Bon Ray Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to the Bon Ray Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.net. Irish News Radio this evening. I hope you've all had a very good Christmas and enjoying St. Stephen's Day today. We're talking again to Derek to catch up what's happening. He's got some news about the refugees coming into Ireland and how they will be made legal. It is very, very scary times we are living in, very frightening. Good evening, Derek. How have you been this evening?
Good evening, everyone. I want to say Merry Christmas to all your listeners, and hopefully it'll be a prosperous new year. Just want to end off the year 2018. Government ended off the year talking about cycling. I want to talk about the UN Migration Pact that was signed earlier there in December. Now, if we rewind back to 2017, the Dáil has told the government back then that they will not allow for undocumented illegal migrants in the country. And the fact is, for a number of reasons, they were stating costs to public services, expensive costs. Also, it's been noted that there's between 30 and 62,000 illegals in Ireland. And the Migrants' Rights Council of Ireland are working on an EU level. And it's very important to note that under the European Pact on Immigration and Asylum agreed at the European Council in 2008, this led then to the UN Migration Pact that will oversee it. And there was two EU Council decisions in this program adopted in 2015. This is an ongoing process, and it's very important to note that it started back in 2008. Those two decisions were made in 2015. They have an all-party support. So you got Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, People for Profit. They all support this. Okay, very important for the
No surprise there, Derek. Really, when you mention those three, I'm not surprised.
They don't call it refugees; they call it program refugees will come to Ireland under the program. No, they call them program refugees under the refugee program. So they're not just refugees; they're program refugees, just to have it distinguished between them. And 785 are due early next year. Now, that is just about what happened last year. Let's fast forward to what happened this year, okay? Based with the UN Migration Pact, they will now introduce a regularisation scheme for undocumented migrants. Very important. And this is relating between international students that came into the country between 2005 and 2007. It's phase 1. Phase 2 will be 2011 to 2016. Very important for this to be noted. Now, the Department of Justice are legalising this. So usually what it is, if for your listeners to know, student visas are given in the country on the basis of a letter from a third level institute. Visa is accepted. 3-year visa, a 4 years visa. Once the visa expired, 85% stay in the country illegally. Right? Yes, it is. It is, and it's
times indeed, Derek. I actually feel sick a lot of the time, even thinking about the government and the destruction of the country, and that we are living in the last days of Ireland. They are trying to get rid, as they did in the famine, the Irish out of Ireland, and it's very obvious to see that the Irish government wants the Irish out of Ireland. And any way they can. We're just, and whether we like it or not, we've no choice in what's happening to our country. And it's not for them to say this land was passed down by our forefathers. Of course, there's a certain amount of immigration that will happen naturally within marriage, jobs. But what this is mass flooding against our wishes. And by killing us all as a race.
And if we speak out against it, we're seen as racists. Unfortunately, nationalism now has been replaced in the dictionary next to the word racism. So if you're a nationalist now, you're a racist. But what I've laid out there to your listeners is directives, is laws, and is started from the 2008. And if you all remember, 2007 when the crash happened, the recession happened. And I want your listeners to note fairly clearly, in 2007, 2008, if you listeners can remember what you were doing back then, well, I tell you what you were doing back then. You were losing jobs, right? We were getting mortgages. Our generation that was born in the 80s were leaving secondary school on the third level, right? Bertie Ahern was in power. Everything was collapsing. Brian Cowan was soon to come in. And Brian Lenihan had cancer. So it's fairly noted for your listeners to know that, let's fast forward 10 years now into the future. We're in 2018. We all know what happened this year with the abortion lies. They are lies, because if you can read that bill, please do so. It's abortion on demand up to birth. Now, what I'm saying to your listeners is, while that abortion referendum was going on, there was underhand dealings also. And there was evictions going on. I know McGann's got into the limelight fantastically. No one messes with the citizens of Roscommon. We should call Strokestown the Tea Party, because that is setting the light now. That's setting the stage, the open acts for 2019. But you can see what was going on. We were all focused here on abortion in this country. But we didn't know sex education was going through. We didn't know the UN Migration Pact was going to be signed in December. We didn't know by the government's regularisation scheme, as I mentioned there, for illegals in this country to be given legal status. We didn't know about anchor babies. Children that are born to non-citizens will be given the right under the Good Friday Agreement. That's where it's coming back to the fact is the Anglo-Irish Treaty is a British mandate. It was signed. There was a war on it. Unfortunately, the wrong side won. Let's fast forward to the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement is solely based on Irish living in Ulster. A lot of my citizens in Northern Ireland, as it's called, call it the occupied territory, and they call us the Free State. Indeed, so we're ERA. But if we want a united Ireland, we all have to work together, and I'll continue to say that we all have to work together, put the barriers of fabrication aside, and let's all work together for this land. And when we have UN Migration Pact, along with the UN Human Rights Council that Mary Robinson was the head of during her tenure, there was 4 genocides going on.
Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese also were kind of, they started this damage with this whole refugee bullshit.
Well, I'm saying to your listeners, Mary Robinson was the chair of the UN Human Rights Council, and Kofi Annan came after her. But it's a highly regarded position to have internationally. But at the same time, let's look at Mary Robinson's tenure. 4 genocides during her time. And she's been hailed as a national hero just because she's the first woman president. Of course, Barack Obama is hailed as a hero in America for being the first black president. It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. It's based on skills, it's based on abilities. And what we're looking at here now is a crisis across the board. other than you could say the Minister for Transport, Shane Ross, is doing a great job with regularisation for our roads in terms of not road maintenance. That has to be improved on local level, but just regularisation in terms of, learner drivers, cutting down on scramblers. Although it has to be noted that the Gardaí in the past week are liable for if they chase after boys on scramblers and an accident occurs, Gardaí will be liable to be prosecuted against. Now, when you have our own police, and I don't call them police, they're actually just guards, really, security guards of the state, we need to revamp our police and service.
Yeah, definitely, Derek. They're not working for the people. The guards are working for the government. But I suppose that's what maybe they're hired to do, is work for the government. They're definitely, I always believed guards, police were for the people, but I actually don't think that that's what they're there for. I think they're there for the government, and that's what they're there for.
Unfortunately, they are working for the government, unfortunately. But at the same time, I want to say to the citizens to respect them at the same time. Please respect the guards, respect what they do. If you call them, it takes 4 hours for you to come out. When they come to your house, they will cite only one car was available. That's unacceptable. So what I'm saying to your listeners, in regarding the immigration crisis, direct provision centres open up in the local community, you petition your superintendent. Number one, you're going to write him an email, a letter, requesting what you need to be done in the area. They have to respond, and a sufficient response is not good enough. You're allowed to back it up. So, for example, scramblers in the local community, what I would be looking for in my local community that's not affected by them, but I'm talking about other local communities that are affected by them, is you want checkpoints in the area, number one. Number two, you want policing. You want a police presence in large council estates and also in private estates as well. And number three, you want guards to keep an eye on direct provision centres. You don't want the migrant community being attacked, nor you don't want them attacking others as well. It has to be noted here, and I am not against immigration as a whole. What I've mentioned at the start of our discussion is unacceptable for a working society to be told and advocated on by the UN in conjunction with the EU as to what our immigration policy should be. That's unacceptable. We do not have control over our borders. We don't. And it has to be noted that that's the reason why the UK are leaving the EU. And that is the reason, because they're coming through the UK into Ireland. And, as a country who wants to progress, as a country that wants to be still in existence in 20 years' time, we have to control our borders. Now, I've worked in immigration. Normal turnover is 2 years. I want them done quicker, but not only quicker. The ones that are refused, you want them refused totally. So you don't want them appealing it, because it's the appeals that's worse than the process itself. And obviously we've touched on the illegal immigration, the fact that when your visa expires, we don't have a police force to deal with it. America has ICE. England has the border security. The UK, has the border police. We don't have, all we have is the Garda, unarmed Garda, the armed Garda, the drugs unit, Criminal Assets Bureau. It's all the Garda. We need to revamp it. And having Drew Harris, a British citizen, swore an oath to the Queen, is unacceptable to say that he relinquished his positions. He's an OBE. When he's finishing, when he retires now from his Garda commissioner, he'll become Sir Drew Harris. Look, when we have appointments like that, there was no protest out Garda HQ. You don't go to the GPO to protest against such. You don't go to the GPO all the time to protest against a certain crisis. If you want to protest against the government, the homeless crisis, for other issues, the HSC, you go to Leinster House and protest outside there. If you want to protest against the guards, you have to go to a Garda HQ and protest there, and let them know that the way the country has been run is unacceptable. When we have 110 undocumented, unfettered, and I'm not saying that lightly to your listeners. It has to be very important for them to note that these 110 Lebanese that are coming in from our Middle East, they're not documented. They're not coming through Irish immigration process. They've been sent over by the UN Refugee Agency. And your listeners have to understand that. Ballinadere now tomorrow into the Direct Provision Centre there, and they will be given their baby foods on arrival in boxes for a 2 months supply is normally the case. Our local communities have to understand, if the people of Roscommon knew about it, which they don't, if they did, they could have gone to the Direct Provision Centre and protested there against this. And at least Roscommon Herald then will be able to make note of it in the local newspaper. And after that, then it'll go international. It all starts on a local level. Even for the homeless crisis, you go to your council and you protest there first. Everything is centralised in Dublin for national crisis. These are local issues. And that's why I'm saying to listeners to make sure you are registered to vote in May. Very important. And I'm saying that and not taking that lightly for your listeners either. We have to control our borders 100%. And your listeners have to know that the government policy last year ago, they weren't in agreement with the regularisation scheme. But because now, 2 months ago, Ivana Bacik, senator, said that she wants anchor babies to be given citizenships. David Norris also...
An over-majority of the population voted against that. It's just, the government is completely treacherous. They have no need for us, Derek. They don't. And it's very sad that the majority of Irish people are still asleep. But the fact is, we are living in the last days of the Indigenous Irish race. And that is the truth. They want us gone and out of the land, same as the famine. When there was 3.5 times enough food to feed the Irish, the British wanted the Irish out of the land. And this is exactly the same time they want the Irish. There's 10,000s and probably more homeless Irish. But I have no problem in finding non-Irish homes and giving them all the benefits, where the Irish are dying, literally dying on the streets. This is we are living. And unfortunately, the last time, at least they knew who their enemy is. As I've said this time, they don't realise that the government is their enemy. It's not even so much the refugees. The refugees are just seeing an easy meal ticket, and I don't blame them. It's not really their fault. It is their government's fault, because they want rid of us. And until we uprise to the government, we don't have any... there's no point in us kind of whinging. We all need to stand together and stand outside and demand Leo leave, and the rest. Fianna Fáil, Fianna Gael, all of them out.
We have it's a serious point in our political history occurring next year, because we did say no for anchor babies. We did vote on that. They acknowledged that in the Shannon. However, they're quoting that it's their human rights that if a child is born in this country, be given automatic citizenship, which is not covered under the Good Friday Agreement. That has to be noted to your listeners. That only applies to the people in Ulster. Very important to note that. Very, very important, because the Anglo-Irish Treaty was a British mandate. The troubles happened between then and the Good Friday Agreement in the 90s, and that was kind of the first phase of a united Ireland as such, because it unites all Irish men and women. We have a constitution that is Catholic orientated, and it's noted for your listeners that a united Ireland will not occur under our constitution. So for those of you who are pro-life, those of you for other issues concerning the constitution as is now today, you'll be happy to note that there has to be another constitution drawn up for united Ireland. Very important to know that. A lot of
But to be honest with you, what
yes.
is the point of a united Ireland when we are not independent, we're not sovereign, we're not neutral, we have nothing? It would be a united Ireland under what? Under everything but being Irish. There would be no Irish left by the time it's united. So what would be the point? The land would be united. The land belongs to the EU and the UN. It is not Ireland. It is not independent. It is not what our forefather wanted for us, and it's not what they died for. And it's not. It's been given away, and it wasn't theirs to give away. This belongs to our grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren, but it's given away. Having a united Ireland under many nationalities is nothing. It is absolutely meaningless. An Ireland for the Irish is what they wanted, not this multicultural. What is even the point of having an independent under this multicultural? Why would you even bother?
We're becoming, as I mentioned in previous discussions, we're becoming Manchester or Birmingham. That's what Ireland is becoming, and they're only cities in the UK. It has to be noted. Look, I've went to Dundrum today with the family. The Gardaí have taken investigations according to my death threats seriously. They are related to the Strokestown protest, and I saw in Dundrum a lot. I thought I was in India. Now, look, I have no issue with integration in society, but I was in Dundrum today, and I can confirm that the place was full of Indians and Pakistanis and Muslims.
Look, as I said before, I've no problem with natural integration. It's always happened, as in yourself and like myself, marriage and that sort of thing, or work-wise. That is a natural. But what is happening is unnatural. It's mass migration, and it's to take down the Irish nation. And we can talk all about all these things, but until the Irish decide to stand up to the Dáil, we have been told this is the end. Leo has a project called 2040, and it's blatant that he wants the end of the Irish race.
1 million undocumented economic migrants by 2040. They're increasing the population. Look, I want to tell your listeners here very importantly, this has to be noted and be taken serious. It's programmed immigration. That's what it is. It's sent down from the top down, from the UN to the EU down to us, and we don't have a say with it at all. If we do not agree to their policies in Brussels, we will be fined. We will be tariffed. And our corporation tax has been used as a hostage to accept these policies, which is unnatural. And when you have the word now refugee changed now to programmed refugee, look up what we discussed at the start of the discussion here on the regularisation scheme. They're programmed refugees. That's what they are. You have your normal refugees back 20 years ago. Now they're all programmed. They're going through the systems. That's what they're doing. Let's look at what's happening in America. Your listeners, they have to look at Fox News and CNN. Well, CNN are very liberal, but look at Fox News. Look at what's happening on the US border. You got children there being brought that are already sick. It has to be noted. One child there died a few days ago, 8-year-old. That child was already dying before it was brought to the border. Has to be noted. Now what's happening there now? I will tell you what's happening now with ICE. They have to look after the children now by force. By force, they have to look after and care for the children. Use American taxpayer money for that illegal activity. And we're harboring our own illegal activity, as I mentioned, with the regularisation scheme that's coming in next year in conjunction with the UN Migration Pact. For The UN, for the regularisation scheme to work, the UN Migration Pact has to be active, has to be valid. So what we need to do is we need to get out of the UN Migration Pact, follow America, follow Israel, follow Australia, follow Hungary, follow Czech Republic, follow the UK. We have to follow all these countries.
The UK, I think, signed in it, unfortunately.
No, the UN, the UK are signed in per se, given light of what's occurring in March. You know, the UK have to get over March first. Once they get out of the EU, now they're controlling their own borders under this UN Migration Pact. So they have to deal with the UN directly. But for us, since we're still in the EU for now, we have the EU telling us. So it's the EU that are negotiation on our 0.1% vote in the EU Parliament, which is unacceptable, really. It's not a democracy. It never has been and never will be. And your listeners has to understand that. Because you cannot be voting for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin and people for profit on the sly just because they have nice flags in Strokestown protest. I saw provisional Sinn Féin and the Republican Sinn Féin there, and Cher Rowe, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right, Cher Rowe, they were there as well. And it's unacceptable when you have a few flags, a few leaflets. The people for profit were hanging leaflets around. And I want your listeners to know there's words going around concerning myself. I want to clarify some of that. The Yellow Fest movement I support personally. The reason why I support it personally, as has already been noted before, I lost my family home 5 years ago to the banks. Now, the LFS movement I support for the family, the McCabe family, and also the citizens of Roscommon and the other 250,000 of our citizens in mortgage arrears.
What we might do is continue this interview in the morning, if that's okay. Are you free in the morning?
I'm free in the morning, yes.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.